preparation before going overseas. So we have that, undergo the training, and depart to Indiantown Gap preparation for World War II, depart somewhere not knowing where we're going to depart, and they issue a new helmets. Prior to that, we have a helmets World War I, flat, which they have it, and also at that time, on each helmet, particularly in 26th Infantry, I presume that was also not knowing, if the 60th and 18th Infantry have a big red one, the 1st Division patch, and in the center of it was the crest, which I later developed for my regiment, being Sergeant Major, to have insignia distinctive, the big red one and the 26th Infantry crest in it, which we have it today in the hands of all veterans who served World War II. And I was the, I would say, culprit to promote that activity. So.
Can you remember a little bit about Colonel Roosevelt?
Yes, Colonel Roosevelt, they took from Muir. Colonel Muir was the regimental commander, and one time I've seen they argue something about, as senior officers on the parade ground, not knowing about Teddy Roosevelt. I do have even my signed warrant as an uncommissioned officer's corporal, promoted in 26th Infantry, his signature on it, Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt. And so he was loved by men, Teddy Roosevelt, because he was a gallant soldier in World War I. He commanded 1st Battalion, 26th Infantry. And of course, by being regimental commander, later promoted to BG, Brigadier General, and became Assistant Division Commander. But at heart, 26th Infantry was his regiment. And of course, the nickname was, when in doubt, attack. That was his motto, Teddy Roosevelt. So the distinctive insignia 26th Infantry, which portrays the arrow, blue arrow, and with a silver color background, always attack. Teddy Roosevelt, when he became Assistant Division Commander, we depart from Indiantown Gap in August, 2nd August, to England. 15,000 supposed to be on a ship at Queen Mary. So therefore, there was assignment for the troops was 3 men to a hammock, 8 hours in a galley to work as a KP, 8 hours on a guard, and 8 hours to sleep. And that hammock been changing hands 3 times. You come up, it's fell out, you go in bed to sleep. At one time, during the passage through Atlantic Ocean to England, there's one motor, a rather boiler, being damaged, and the Queen Mary was slowed down to the point because she could outrun the submarines. So there was a little frantic situation, but the troops not knowing about it. They repair and we slowly close into Scotland port, and from there we moved to Tidworth Barracks on train. Arriving in Scotland, you hear this different language. Are you the Yankee over here? Are you want a cup of tea? Blokes, and you hear all that slang over there. All the restless female issued donuts for the troops and coffee, and we continue on the train to Tidworth Barracks, where preparation took place for training. Undergoing amphibious operation, we moved to Scotland, back in the area where we train, not knowing that we'd be going to Africa, so we train going up the mountain for about 15 hours. A constant with a fully loaded pack, everybody move up the hill. And in Scotland, the ground, in that time being over there was mushy on the ground, and you move to the top of a hill, still was mushy and wet. In other words, there was a constant training in a wet territory. And from then, after the training, nobody knew, convoy assemble, proceed to Gibraltar, where we'd be going. Then finally the news was broken to the troops that we'd be moving to Oran, Africa, North Africa. And so to give you information, preparation, where we're going to land. And
we just take a quick break there,
yes,
and then we'll pick up the North African activity after the break.
I have something to say when you start play the game for keeps. The separate.
Tapes rolling.
Okay, marker up.
Scene 6, take 2, Theodore.
Good. Camera setting.
Sergeant Major, when we stopped before, you were describing the movement of your unit aboard ship on its way to the North African landings. Why don't we pick it up there and go ahead?
Well, during passage from England to North Africa, most of the troops been daily trained, physical preparation and so forth. And also at the same time, you have a little small dictionary in French. So upon landing, you're supposed to say a few words in French to the troops, expecting that possibly they surrender. The feeling was at that time at higher level staff that we entering and those possibly will be pro-Vichy government, maybe was swinging to our side that we are fighting. And so soldiers been training the words. And first of all, the upon landing will be once a loudspeaker be announced that we are Americans. So it's, nous amis, vous amis, les Américains. That means don't fire upon us, we are Americans, we are your friends. But believe me, as we've been speaking somewhere, then suddenly you have this rifle fire or machine gun, so you forgot about nous amis, vos amis, les Américains, but you've been ready to engage with your weapons, which you've been trained for. The landing was, we moved about, landing took place about 1 o'clock in the morning on the chill. The sun, the moon was over Iran, a full, and the chills was going in, the mind going through. How you gonna cope up and landing this place? Now, softly, a British sailor was say, whistle and sing the Red Sails in a Sunset, and my memory went on it. That's my favorite song today, the Red Sails in a Sunset of the British sailor singing. It was a sentimental song, and the landing was initially not unopposed to some degree, but upon landing, we started getting some fire from flanks. And as we advanced up the hill, on a hill, Jebel Majajir, where we encountered sniper resistance and artillery fire. And at that moment, it called the start playing the game for keeps, the separation men from the boys. I was upon landing, initially I was a platoon guide, but I would say that 2 hours later, I was platoon sergeant and I was a platoon leader. Due to the platoon sergeant was captured, lieutenant was wounded, and I assumed the position. That evening, on the 8th November 42, company commander, I received a word, Sergeant Dovo report to company commander. The company commander mentioned to me, I've seen him in a dugout in position. He said, Sergeant Dovo, I want you to take a couple of men to your right flank. We have a machine gun over there, knock out the French machine gun. French machine gun name was mitrailleuse. That's the French pronunciation for the the machine gun. So I have one soldier who was an Indian from Oklahoma. I said, this is going to be one of them because he can smell enemy as we're going to advance. I was greatly disappointed because she said, oh no, not me. I can find out. So what happened, I was leading those two men and they followed me. We entered to the area where the machine gun position was. And you breathe with late reason, the machine gun been vacated. So in other words, return back to our lines. At that time, it's harder to enter to your own position than go out. The password we have at that time, Ohio Silver, and consign was away. So many soldiers maybe were lost, and you could hear through the night, Ohio Silver, and the Frenchmen even know, and you could hear, Ave, Ave, and the echo bounds in the mountain, so you could hear that. They knew the consign, so forth. I entered to the area and receive a quick fire from your own position. You have to say Ohio Silver, and then finally I have to say who I was because I was guiding back to my company area. So I report the company commander, and I enter over there to that area, and I see the 10th Medical Aid Station, and by name, a officer that was Major Rainey, who still is alive. I possibly even see him this end of the month. Major Rainey was operate on Lieutenant Peshnarev, and he was sort of a blue blood from the Russian aristocracy. He was lying on a table and he was taking chunk of lead out of his buttock over there, and talked to me. He said, well, I got the piece of lead over here, but the doctor will fix me up. Not knowing the officer received a shock, he was dead in the morning. So that's not knowing what it means in a combat, what happened. At that time, finally we, not only to hold a position at night, when you train, you you have it knowledge what to do. But when you play something like that for keeps, there is much confusion, particularly on that day. We've been opposed by some troops, partly of Foreign Legion. And also there was word passed on, those troops, when they kill Americans so far, they cut the ears and you get so much extra money, the individual. And I was thinking, I have to be careful. Nobody's going to cut my ears if I can help it. So therefore, next day in the morning, of course, hungry and still under pressure. The day in the combat, you're playing the game for keeps, moving with the troops. Suddenly I see over there Teddy Roosevelt arrive in a Jeep with his aide, and he come out of them. So I moved my platoon in a hurry, advance ahead, because I said, generals in the area, you have to protect them. As I moved forward over there, shortly I received fire, and just ricochet of that particular area when I was lying, because another platoon from the company fired at me because they said, that's a Frenchman. But the sergeant mentioned to this officer, don't fire, that Sergeant over with his men. Anyway, I wasn't hit. But then I have a little talk with that young officer over there. First of all, find out who you fire on. While being over there, that was my engagement. Finally, I received a shot through my back. We have an English gascape. And at that time smoking, I have a roll of 2 carton cigarettes in it, and you have a straps of a shoulder. And so he shot me from that angle, and bullet going through it, 2 cartons tobacco, as you know, how gives the cushion. I thought I had the shoulders ripped, and suddenly I froze momentarily, and I just slowly turned around. I received a shot from the left side. Somebody fired at me from left side. Slowly I moved back and watched the terrain feature over there, and I finally spot the location of this French helmet outlined in a brush. Not seeing the face, but the helmet, I said, well, come true, my M1 rifle. You well zero in up to 175 or 200 yards you can lay in a 2-inch space. And I just discharged 2 quick shots over the below the helmet. And it was coming true, because after I crawled on it to the individual, there was about 2-inch shot apart over them. It was eliminated. That was my first victim. I went through the pocket, because when you kill the enemy, you got to know documentation, what unit and so forth. He didn't have any papers on him, but at least I took it 2 French revolvers out of him, and I crawled back. I said, well, this is it. So the snipers, we did have in the snipers taking some toll in the French artillery. But finally, our artillery zero in, which was 33rd, and we eliminated the elements. On the 3rd day, on 11th November, around noon, they finally decided that the French will surrender. I see a long column of troops marching, and on one individual on a horse in the front riding.